So basically, I just think it's pretty amazing that you were on the shores of Normandy, and but you were Coast Guard.
I'll tell you what happened.
U.S. Coast Guard, right?
When I got out of my boot camp, they had the Coast Guard had a number of ships, but they took us and we operated with the Navy. So we were on a Navy ship, but it was a Coast Guard group. And when the group I was in, we were the only Coast Guard ship. The rest of this fleet was Navy, regular Navy men. So when we went across and everything, why we made the landing over at Normandy. We had, before we went in the invasion, of course, we loaded up all the troops a couple days before. And along with that, we loaded 25 pharmacists and 6 doctors, along with the troops. And then when we went over across, we didn't make it the first day. We came in on the morning of the second day. We were, en route. And
the morning of the second day of the invasion?
Yeah, the invasion was on the 6th. We were out. We got there the morning of the 7th,
okay.
early in the morning. And we had, then when we pulled in, like I told you, we had all these medical people aboard. Okay, when we went in, we anchored by the battleship Texas. They were, lobbing shells in on the bank yet, still on the invasion. I mean, they'd made the main invasion. We came in, and we anchored by the Texas, this battleship Texas. Okay, then after it came, and then on the beach we had to wait till the high tide. You went in on this landing ship I had. You went in on high tide and banged in on the beach. You dropped open the bow doors, and your trucks and stuff went off. Well, the first truck or 2 that went off hit landmines and blew up.
Oh, man.
And so we lost, I don't know how many on that. And then afterward, we unloaded all the rest of them. And then after that, we waited until left it, and towards the end, after the tide went out, we were standing high and dry. The ship was completely on land. Tide goes out, and your ship is just there. There's nothing on it. You're just high and dry. Okay, then the battle was in. They were bringing in the wounded, and we would stack them up on what we called the tank deck. Inside we had tiers. We'd let all these wounded ones, we'd lay them up on that, and the doctors were up above. There were 6 doctors, and they would take care of them as they could. And so then, and then when it come time to leave, of course, we'd have all these. And then later on, this is what we did for the first few landings. We'd bring in the troops, and we'd, unload the troops and take wounded back.
Wow.
And then after it got in so far, and then when we came back, when they could tend to the wounded over in France, then we would bring back prisoners.
Wow.
I mean, we'd bring back prisoners, and then, bring low troops or whatever. We'd bring over troops, we'd bring over stuff, and then...
So you were running back and forth between the bigger ships? Is that what you're saying?
Between England and France, I made 60 trips.
Oh, okay, coast to coast.
60 trips across the channel, back and across. And then, of course, you had their E-boats that would, harass you on the way, back way and forth.
So how long was the time period that you were doing that, 60 trips? Do you remember?
It went, let's see, we started and we ended up probably 6 months. I mean, then, after they got so far inland, then they... on the tank deck, we called it, down below, they put in railroad tracks, 3 tiers of tracks. Then they loaded box cars. As they advanced, they took over the trains. They needed cars. So when we'd pull in, they'd load in 3 tiers of box cars. Then we'd run across, unload, back. And for I don't know how many trips, all we did was just over, unload, back. We didn't even get ashore. It was the minute we'd pull in, they'd load us more box cars. We'd go back over. Then
so supplies, or just they needed the cars?
Yeah, needed the cars. Then we went to a city called Cherbourg. They had a big thing that came out, from we could just put in. The track would connect with this, with this big thing coming out, and they'd run the cars off, and out you'd go still high tide. So it was.
Oh, so you didn't have to wait and get stuck
Yeah, I mean,
high
we
and
were
dry.
just in and out, in and out.
Got
We
it.
just had no
Cherbourg
time.
is the name of the town, you said?
Cherbourg.
Cherbourg.
French, yeah.
Okay.
That's where we did. And then on the invasion night, we hit Omaha Beach and what were they? See, I can't even think of them anymore. There was 3 beaches we hit. Okay, God, I didn't think I'd ever forget them. But anyway, towards the very last, I mean, after when we were about done running, we even played softball on that beach.
Oh, be done.
About 4 months or 5 months later.
On Normandy Beach?
Yeah.
Wow.
They cleared, and over that period of time, they cleared off all the landmines. You know what they did? They had landmines up on tiers, so when you came in at high tide, if you hit that, of course, they'd explode. Then on one of our trips, I just will tell you this one too.
Sure, love hearing it.
They used to call us the Lucky 27. That was a number on the ship. We got one time, we came in, we were anchored waiting for the high tide. And then we were scheduled to go in. The beach, they call it the beach master. He would tell you when to come in. Okay, it was our turn to come in. Our anchor chain fouled. We couldn't get the anchor chain up, So the ship behind us came in, took our place, hit a landmine, blew it right in half. The ship, the front part went one way, the back part went the other. So, and it was our turn to go. If we hadn't,
You'd have been gone.
we'd have been gone.
I don't know about you guys, but
So
I have
after
chills.
that, they called us the Lucky 27.
Holy smokes, I guess.
Did you lose very many of your unit?
No, I mean,
The 27,
we didn't just, all we did then was just pick up survivors that, that made it.
wow.
I'd probably take you one more little one. When we went across left the U.S. for the first trip across, it was, took us 21 days.
Okay.
And when we got about 1 day out of North Africa, this was at night, on April the 1st, the Germans hit us they came from Spain with an air raid at 4 o'clock in the morning, and they dropped flares, to light up the convoy. And then so then we had our first battle, our first contact at 4 o'clock in the morning on April 1st.
So at,
April Fool's Day, yeah.
so at 18 years old, what goes through your mind when that happens?
Don't remember.
Just so in the middle
I
of
hope I
it.
get out of here alive.
Yeah. It was,
Yeah, yeah, wow.
just, some things you remember, some things.
Well, sure, yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Now, I'm sorry, so you're saying the first trip was 21 days, and that's
It took-
North
it
Africa.
took-
Where did you start?
We started in Norfolk, Virginia.
Okay.
I took my boots in Baltimore, Maryland, and then in Norfolk, Virginia is where I got put on the ship.
Uh-huh,
And
okay.
then from there, we went down to Norfolk, I think, and anyway, when they loaded up our ship, they filled the ballast tanks with high-test fuel. When we went across, we were loaded up. The ballast tanks are what, to list the ship. Anyway, we filled
Sure.
it with high-test fuel oil. And on the tank deck, instead of having, tanks and all that, we had ammunition.
Good Lord, if you'd
So
done
you
hit
took-
me.
Yeah, it
Oh,
was just
man.
tier on tier, just loaded with,
Oh.
if
you'd-
they'd ever hit us, we'd have blown oil.
You'd have blown.
So all you really saw in that battle was the flares then? They just missed you,
Yeah.
is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Did you shoot back?
Oh, yeah.
So you were, I mean, what was your role in that?
I was a loader on a gun.
Okay.
You had different types of guns. You had what you called 40 millimeters, which you put the big shells in. Then you had what they called 20 millimeters that you had the shells were all in a container and you loaded it. I was a loader.
Okay.
You had a
That was your
pointer and
job.
You had a shooter on the 20s and on the 40s. You had
So like sirens go off and gets you out of bed,
you
or
had the alarm.
the alarm goes off and then it's all battle stations?
Everybody's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was at 4 in the morning. that
Wow.
They came out, so they dropped flares first. They knew we were coming. And
So
Did they do much damage?
I don't remember how many they got. Oh, yeah, they hit some, but I don't remember. I mean, I just don't remember.
Well, sure. Yeah. Some of it's
How many
shock.
they got, I don't know. You just see big flames, and you don't.
You're just glad it's
You
not
wanna
you
get
and
the
you
hell
keep
out, yeah.
keep moving, yeah.
So you went back and forth from England to Normandy for 6 months?
60 trips.
Yeah, over 6 months? Or
I'm
just 60
guessing, I
trips?
don't remember the last trip we made because when we continued to make trips until the war was over.
Okay.
And then when the war was over, we loaded up a bunch of occupation troops and went up to Oslo, Norway. And so we got to go up to Oslo, Norway, went through the fjord and,
Oh, aren't those beautiful?
yeah.
Those fjords?
So,
Oh, God.
so what was the purpose then? Was that just light duty after war was over?
Yeah,
or
you were
you
just kind of
picking up-
you were waiting then, and then they, had to take occupation troops up. So I don't know how many we had, but we took a load of occupation troops up, and we had, I don't know how many in the convoy. But they had a big 3 minesweepers ahead of us. This was in the North Sea, it was still
Yeah.
mined.
Yeah.
And the king of Norway was on one of the ships, and he had 1 minesweeper for him, and then for the rest of the convoy, the other 2.
Oh,
Wow.
But anyway, I remember we went through the fjord. We landed there at midnight, I think. And the sun was still up,
Yeah.
and we unloaded, and you had on your ship you're divided into port side crew and port side and the starboard side. And when you take leave and whatnot, one side gets off and the other side stays on. Well, we each got either an hour or 2 hours in Oslo.
Huh.
So and then we got our 2 hours and they got their 2 hours.
She's done.
Okay, and then we pulled out and went right back. That was so we
Oh,
were
that's
in
all you
Oslo
got.
about 4 hours.
Wow.
So then the war's over, and
Then-
what happens after that?
Then we came back.
You came back to the States.
We
And
came.
mustered out right away?
No, I could say we came back in, what time was it? It was in the summer, July or August, something like that. We came back in 45. And then after we got back, the war in Japan was over. When we got back. And then I got my first leave. I never did get a leave.
How many years
Years.
were you in total?
2.5 years.
2.5 years. And you never had a leave until you got back after the...
Yeah.
He was
You
in
didn't
And then I didn't get it right away, but then when we pulled back in the States, of course, I worked in the office, and the rest of the guys got their 30-day leave, starting as soon as we got back.
So then where were you at this point?
I was there, I had to stay, I was one of the last ones, so I didn't get my 30-day leave till October.
And so where were you at this point?
Let's say we were in Boston. And so I got to come home and over the hunting season, got my 30 days, and then I went back and then we decommissioned the ship. That was it. We decommissioned it, and I got put in the district office in Boston. That was in November, and I was in the district office from November until through February, and then I finally worked, I processed the discharges in the district office until my time was up. And I got my points were up in February. So then from there I went to Detroit, Michigan and got discharged.
And what ship were you on?
USS LST 27.
Okay, that was
The Lucky 27. Okay.
The LST stands for Landing Ship Tanks.
Okay.
I mean,
So I'm trying to picture in my mind, because you're talking about bringing things on and off it, aircraft
Equipment
carrier
men.
kind of?
No,
Or,
on the tank deck, when we went across, we carried another little ship. They called it an LCI. It was a smaller landing ship. And then when we went over, there was an elevator on, I don't know if you remember, an LST is one where the bow doors open and the thing comes down.
Okay.
You can load up the tank deck, but there's also an elevator that goes up, so you load, all your Army stuff on the top
Okay.
deck also. You load that first.
okay.
You
I'm going to have to go
bring it
look,
in
but
on the
I think
elevator, and then you load everything on the top. Then when that's full, then you load the bottom.
Wow. interesting.
Yeah.
Great storytelling.
So you,
Thank you.
Thank you.
You
Thank
did
you
a
so
lot
much.
injured and everything after you got rid of all your other equipment and things. That's then when you did your medical people.
Yeah, I mean, after you unloaded. Yeah.
All
I
right.
mean, then these doctors, they would, when they bring in these wounded, after a while, they would do surgery.
Right on the.
Yeah, they
Oh.
had, on this tank deck on the one side, there was just a big open area, and they had makeshift operating tables. And I don't
Wow.
know how they ever did it.
On a
'cause the damn
boat.
ship was, waving
Yeah.
and going back. And
That's crazy.
then when we brought back prisoners, that was something else again. I
And
mean,
they had to craft something to keep them in and such.
No, you just they just kind of.
They were done?
Yeah, I mean, you had,
Oh.
they were areas that they kept them down on the tank deck, just,
Huh.
Were they pretty docile?
oh, yeah.
They were
Most-
ready to be
I'll
done.
tell you what, most of them were older fellas, like in their 50s, or like maybe 14 years old, 15 years old, just real young kids.
Just people that were conscripted that decided to help, and
Yeah, and they just probably,
so they weren't hardcore
Surrendered.
lifetime soldiers. They
Yeah,
were
most of them.
people,
most of them, yeah, they were just,
And they were sick of the war.
people protecting their
Most of them
country.
that we got.
Basically, they were
I
sick
mean,
of
of course,
the
there
war.
were some died hard too, but,
And they were German.
oh, yeah.
It was
Okay.
occupied
Oh,
by-
these weren't French because it was already occupied. Gotcha.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I
Then
wasn't
when we
tracking on
were,
that yet.
When we were down in North Africa, when we came from North Africa up to England and whatnot, why, we brought up a bunch of Frenchmen.
Okay.
I mean, we loaded up their equipment. And so in their fuel tanks, they had what they call vino.
Right.
Wine.
Yeah.
I can still remember.
In their
that.
fuel tanks.
Some of our cooks would trade them, some bread or some meals or some food for their
For
vino.
some of their That's funny.
Well, thank you so much, Jim. I appreciate you telling us stories, and this will be interesting. Do you mind if I put it on YouTube so I can send it to the family?
No, I don't care.
Well, this is my Uncle Jim Harder, and we're here together on Tuesday, April 29th, 2014, in Winter, South Dakota, where we've all gathered to visit family after a family funeral. So it's just such a great opportunity to be together
mentioned, Red
and
is-
talk about life. Yeah. So, all right. Thanks.
Yeah.